Today we're going to do a full tutorial on this bag, the Madge by American Stitchers. Hi everyone, I am Chris and this is Simply Classic. Thank you so much for tuning in. I sincerely appreciate it. If you're new to the channel and you enjoyed today's content, please make sure that you subscribe. If you like what you see, give me a little thumbs up and comment below. I read every single comment that y'all write. So I really do appreciate your participation. Today we're going to do this bag. It is the Madge by American Stitchers. And someone reached out and asked me to do the tutorial on this bag, and I'm glad you did because I really wanted to get through all of the American Stitchers patterns. And I've done several, but life got in the way and never finished. So this is one of them that I had on my list. So this is the Madge, M-A-D-G-E, Madge by American Stitchers. So just like American Stitchers bags, very true to form, it is a concealed carry bag. And what that means, I've had some of you ask, is that we have zippers on the side here, one here, and one here. This pocket actually goes all the way through, but there's some Velcro in here, and it is to carry if you have a concealed carry license and you carry concealed weapons, okay? This goes right through. Now, if you don't, you can certainly still make this bag, and this is an awesome stash pocket, right? So I think about, like, if you want to save money to buy fabric and you don't want your significant other to know, or maybe you're carrying passports, it's just a pocket that is a little more concealed, let's say, than when you get into your main part of your bag. It's separate from that, okay? So I'm going to show you how to do all of this today. This is the back of the bag. In the front of the bag, we have this great flap, and you have a slip pocket here. Now, inside the slip pocket, you actually have, you see it, another second little slip pocket, and you have 4 credit card slots in there. So you can, without having to unzip your bag, if you want to put your driver's license or something like that in there, you certainly can, and it's easy to get to. Inside the bag, the way you get in is you unzip both of these here, and you have a very roomy interior. Let me see if I can open this up and show y'all. Okay. Great fitting. It's a little hard to see. But because it is a little narrow here at the throat of the bag, I guess you could call it, it does come in some. But on one side, you do have a zipper pocket. It's on this side here, you see, and I put a zipper overlay on there, which is a little bit different than the pattern, but I'll show you how to do that. Other than that, it's a deep bag. I mean, look at how far down this goes. It goes way down in there. So overall, it is a really secure bag, I guess you could call it. It's not something that anybody's going to break into very easily or pickpocket you on. So once you slip that, this comes down, and you have this awesome flap. Now, if you were using a solid fabric, this flap screams, in my opinion, for a great embroidery design, applique design, something of that nature. If you buy the pattern and you look at the tester bags, they did a lot of that, and they are just gorgeous, fabulous, absolutely wonderful. This is a crossbody bag, so you do have a crossbody strap, and you know, just like true to most crossbodies, you wear it as a crossbody bag. I'm going to see if I can maybe back up and show you. Okay, you can see the size of it here. It's really a good size, not too big, not too small. This exterior, this vinyl is from Bolt's Bags. This is actually one of her custom prints she's doing now. It's a really beautiful green. It's almost like a, well, it's got different colors of green in it. It's like a mint, but it's got all kinds of different greens in it. It's really pretty. And of course the black accents. The lining I used was just a cotton from my quilt shop, my local quilt shop. And then on the conceal carry part, I used some waterproof canvas because you do need to use a little bit thicker lining there. Now, one thing I want to tell you about this bag. Gail, American Stitcher's Gail, says that you need to use fusible fleece for this, for the stabilizer. I 100% agree. You do not need Decoville Light for this bag. As you can see, this bag stands up just fine on its own. It's not saggy at all. It's perfect. There's no reason to use Decoville Light. And we are actually going to be pulling the bag through the zipper pocket on the inside. So if you think you want to use Decoville Light, think about that before you make your decision, because you do have this concealed carry pocket too that you're contending with when you're trying to pull it through. It's very doable, no problem, but I would not use Decoville Light. The concealed carry pocket and the foam in that gives it enough stability that it stands up on its own. You do not need any Decoville Light, so go with the fusible fleece. I did make a couple of changes on the credit card slots. I kept the woven fuse out of the seam allowances. I went over that with you when I go over the pattern pieces. Other than that, this is a fantastic bag. It's awesome. It's very challenging. It's going to teach you some things. It's going to, I would say if you want to make this, maybe make a test bag first, just to kind of get used to some of the new techniques and stuff that you're going to learn with this bag. Gail has it listed as an intermediate to advanced bag, and I do agree with that. But if you want to, like I said, learn some new skills, maybe you're a confident beginner and you say, hey, you know, I'm ready to move on to the next step, this is a good one, and hopefully this tutorial helps you. So, order the pattern. I've got it linked down below. And let's get sewing. Okay, let's go over pattern pieces in preparation, because there's actually a lot of steps you need to do to prepare for this bag. It's going to help and make the bag construction a lot quicker. So we're going to start out by looking at our main pattern, our main body. And the main body is one large pattern piece. Okay. So what I always do whenever I have a pattern, even my own, that it says place on the fold, is I'll print the pattern pieces twice and put it together, so I'm cutting one large piece. A lot of times when you cut on the fold, you have a, little take up in your fabric and the pieces don't come out exactly right, so I always do it this way. You're going to notice on this piece there's several markings, and you need to transfer some of those markings to some of the pieces. So let's talk about that. You have a main front and a main back, both the same, except for on the back piece, and I've actually marked this with a B, you're going to mark 3 things on each side. One is going to be where your gusset ends, and that's on this pattern piece. Then you're going to mark the concealed carry zipper. There's 2 spots to mark that. And then on this side, same thing. You've got where your gusset ends and 2 marks for your concealed carry zipper. If you happen to do embroidery on the flap, if you want to do that, you want to embroider it on your back piece, not your front piece, because this back flap is going to flap forward, and then that's what's going to show. On the front piece, I have this marked with an F. The only thing you're going to mark on this is where your gussets end. Don't worry about the concealed carry zippers, because that doesn't apply to the front piece. Also, on your main pieces, both the front and the back, you want to go ahead and mark your centers at the top and at the bottom. On your lining pieces, you're going to do the same thing as the front. You're going to mark the top and the bottom, and then you're going to put a little mark where your gusset ends on both sides on both pieces. Okay, on your gusset piece looks like this. Okay, you've got kind of a weird shape to it. So on your gusset piece, you want to flip it so that you have the wrong side up, and you're going to put the pattern piece on top of it. Then you're going to mark where your concealed carry zippers begin and end, and you're also going to cut out this funny little V at the top of your pattern piece. Don't cut it on your fabric, just on your pattern piece. And then you want to mark that on the pattern piece. So you're going to do that for both main pieces. And when you mark where your concealed carry zippers begin and end, always put it on the wrong side of your gusset. Okay? And then again, mark your stitching lines at the top. On your lining pieces of your gusset, all you have to do is mark the stitching line at the top on both lining pieces. Okay. Then you have a front slip pocket. And on this front slip pocket piece, all you have is a main and a lining. There's no fleece or anything on this pocket. Of course, there is some woven interfacing on the lining. Okay, there are some credit card slots under the main flap. So you want to go ahead and mark your lines as Gail says. You're going to start at the bottom as you mark, and then you're going to start out by folding wrong sides together, then right sides, the wrong sides, the right sides. Okay, you know how to do these, I'm sure. So this is what you end up with. The only thing I suggest on this is when you apply your woven interfacing, keep it out of your seam allowances. It's just going to help reduce bulk, because on this piece we have a backing, and it's going to be kind of a combination credit card slot slip pocket. So on the credit card slot piece, as well as the backing piece, go ahead and keep your woven interfacing out of your seam allowance. That's something that's not in the pattern. I just suggest you do that. It'll help with the bulk. You're going to have a piece of Peltex or Decaville Heavy for the bottom. Don't fuse that on yet. You're going to have your interior zipper pocket. Now, y'all know I like to do facings on my interior zippers. So this pattern is not done that way. She actually has a cotton that you sew on, and then you flip it. And if you like to do your zippers that way, certainly do them that way. If not, go ahead and cut a zipper facing that is 10 by 2. Mark 3/4 of an inch all the way around, and then cut out your little square like this, okay? And then she has you cut one large zipper pocket. What I did was cut the large zipper pocket and then just cut that piece in half, because I like to do my zipper pockets a little bit different than she did in the pattern. Okay, you also have a concealed carry pocket piece. Now, as you can see on this piece, I did the same thing. I cut my two pieces or two pattern pieces, taped them together so I had one large piece instead of trying to cut on the fold. And then there's a square where you actually put your Velcro on there. So I cut out the square, and then I actually drew that on the piece here with just some air erase pen, so I know exactly where to place that. you have two pieces, and as you see, this is different. I'm using waterproof canvas for this. She does suggest that you use a heavier lining for this pocket. Waterproof canvas is perfect for that, so I'm using that for my concealed carry pocket. She does suggest that you use fusible foam so you can keep it out of your seam allowances. I don't have any fusible foam, so I'm just using regular foam, and I'm just going to sew it on because I am using an industrial machine. I know it can handle it, but if you're using a domestic machine, you probably want to get some fusible foam and just keep it out of your seam allowance. Now, if you're going to be using this bag for something other than a concealed carry, then you really don't have to use foam here. You can just use regular cotton or linen or whatever you're going to use for your lining, and go ahead and put some woven interfacing on and just use that. You really don't need the foam. So it's up to you how you want to do that. You're going to have a crossbody strap, which I have completed, and I'm just edge coated my short ends, and I'm letting that dry. And then you have strap connectors, and I just cut one large piece for my strap connector, drew a line down the center, folded my edges in, and I will be sewing down each side of this. You're going to need the loop part of the hook and loop tape, which is the soft part. You can use, if you have 4-inch, you're going to have a 4x4 piece. I only have 2-inch, so I have two 2x4 pieces, and I'm just going to sew them together, or sew them next to each other on the piece of pocket there. Okay, she has you using 3 number 3 zippers and 1 number 5 zipper. One of these number 3 zippers is for your interior zipper pocket. I actually like to use a number 5 for that, and I cut out my zipper overlay for a number 5, so I'm using a number 5 zipper for that. But I do suggest you use number 3 zippers for the concealed carry pockets. You're going to have a zipper on each side. On these zippers, you need to go ahead and mark them as she says in the pattern. So I just took a Tandy silver marking pen, and I put little teeny tiny, you can see that, there's little, there you go, little teeny tiny marks in the seam allowance on both of those concealed carry zippers, number 3 zippers. That is what you're going to actually line up with the marks we put on the main bag, so it's really important that you put those on here. And then the other thing I did was on my longer zipper that is on the front flap, I did mark the center. I just put a little notch here in the center. That'll help in the future as we go on. Okay, so make sure you get all of those things done before we move on. It's going to be important later on as we proceed with the bag. So the first thing we're going to do is sew the foam. And if you have fusible foam, you don't need to sew it, but I do not. So I am going to sew the foam on my concealed pocket pieces. I'm just going to baste that on. And then we will sew, I will sew this with you. We'll go ahead and sew the Velcro pieces onto this concealed carry pocket piece. Okay, so I have my foam basted onto my pieces here. And I'm just going to take my Velcro loop, which is the soft side. Comes with a sticky back. So I'm going to place that on right in the square. Just like this, and then I'm going to stitch it down. I'm just going to butt these right up to each other. Now, if you're not using this as a concealed carry pocket, if you're just using it as a secret pocket, then you certainly do not have to add this Velcro. Okay, there it is. So the next thing you're going to do is take your zippers, your number 3 concealed carry zippers, go ahead and put your hole on them. And then once you do, we're going to stitch the bottom of these so that it does not come undone. And actually that's a very important part in this bag. Usually I don't worry too much about it, but in this bag you definitely need to do it. So I'm just going to stitch over this. And then I'm going to do the same thing with the other one. Okay, we're going to set these aside and let's go ahead and stitch our strap connector piece. I'm going to cut this in half. So now I have the 2 pieces that the pattern says to cut and sew. And then I'm going to put my D-rings on there and just base that close. Okay, so in the next step, we're going to construct the concealed carry pocket. So you want to take your back piece, and if you have embroidery on your flap, it's going to be this piece. We're going to put some double-sided tape in between our marks. I have my 1/4 inch double-sided tape, and I'm going to put it right in between these marks. You do have a slight curve here, but this tape should just curve right around it without a problem. It's not too severe of a curve. Okay, open up your zipper. And we're going to place the zippers right side down with the zipper pull at the bottom of the bag, which is the fatter part of the bag. And you want to line up the mark on your zipper with the mark on your fabric. And when you get through, the mark at the top of your zipper should be right at the top of your, the 2 marks at the top should match too. That's what I'm trying to say. Don't pull these zippers as you lay them down, just lay them down nicely, you'll be good to go. Now take your concealed carry pocket piece, if you put Velcro on, the part with the Velcro, and you're going to do the same thing. You're going to match up these lines here with the lines on your zipper. So let's put some double-sided tape first, right in between the marks. Now, if you prefer to baste these zippers on first, you can certainly do that. For me, in this case, the double-sided tape is going to work just fine. We will have a part later on that I basted it. I'm going to take it off both sides, and we're just going to lay this right on top, and again make sure our marks are marked or lined up. So, mark, mark. I am going to put a couple of clips on here. Just to make sure it doesn't pull apart. And I'm also going to transfer my mark on the back side. I'm not sure which side I'm going to sew from yet, but that way it's there and I will see it and know exactly where I need to stop. Because when we sew this, we're going to stitch it between these two marks only. You don't want to go beyond your marks. Okay, so okay, so now you're going to stitch this with a 1/4 inch seam allowance from mark to mark, right in between, and you're going to back stitch at the beginning and the end. Make sure my zipper pull is out of the way and stitch right to that other mark without going past it. And we're going to do the same thing on the other side. Okay, so from here, let's flip this around. I'm going to zip my, oh, and make sure you don't do that. Make sure you do not pull your zipper pull off. I have to unstitch this and fix that. Okay. So on this side, I'm going to do the same thing, but do not pull your zipper pull off. There we go. Okay, I'm just going to kind of pull and finger press this. You are not going to top stitch this. You're going to flip this over and get your other concealed carry pocket piece. Go ahead and put some double-sided tape between your marks again. Okay, when you pull the tape, the backing of the tape off, what we're going to do is put this and attach this on the zipper on the wrong side of the zipper. And again, match up your marks. So I'm going to start over here. I'm going to just flip, have my back part of my zipper here, and I'm just going to match this up with the marks on my zipper. Just like this. I'm going to put a couple of clips to hold it. Just make sure it doesn't come undone. Okay, my marks aren't matching up, so let me try to do this again. There we go. Okay, we're going to do the same thing on the other side. Now, as you do this, you're going to find that you're kind of pulling your zipper straight up. Okay, so your zipper was flapping down, but this is kind of pulling it back up into the bag. And I always I check and just make sure my tops here are about aligned. They should be pretty close. The bottoms should be pretty close. Okay, and here's where I am going to baste this on before we put our gusset on. So using about 1/8 of an inch seam allowance, I'm going to baste this from mark to mark. So I'm just going to put my needle in right at my mark and come on up. And make sure you stop at your next mark and do not pull your zipper pull off. As a matter of fact, I'm going to go in the other direction to make sure I don't do that. Okay. So open up your zippers. And flip your panel down like this. You're going to take your gusset pieces now, and on the gusset pieces, you're going to put tape between your two zipper marks. On the right side, of course. These marks really need to be made on the right and the wrong side of this, so in the beginning you may want to do that. Would help. Okay, so let's on this tape. And if you look at this gusset piece, you see that the zipper comes up pretty high on it. Okay, so from here, this is the top of my bag, right? Because this is the top of the concealed carry pocket. I'm going to place my gusset on there, lining up my marks again. So here. I'm just going to place this down, come around, it should match up with my lower mark. And we're going to do the same thing on this side. Okay, so I told you wrong. When you mark the second gusset, you're going to mark one with this pattern piece right side up as to where the zipper placement is. You're going to flip the pattern piece and mark it right side down as to where the zipper placement is. Don't do it with the pattern piece right side up both sides, because you want them on opposite sides. So let me take this tape off, put it on the other side. All right, peel the backing off and match up your marks. Okay, before I sew this together, I am going to just kind of do a little test run here, because this gusset piece is going to come around the back like this, and we're going to sew the bottom of it together. So I want to make sure that it's going to hit the bottom or the center here once I sew my. So when you put your fleece on, your fleece is outside your seam allowance. So right about where your fleece ends should be the center mark of your concealed carry pocket. So it's a good way to, and granted you have a little curve here, but you can just kind of get an idea to make sure you are about right on that. And if you're off, you want to move your gusset just a little bit before you. Having a hard time seeing my center mark here. Let me make that a little bigger. There we go. So center there. So I think this one is off a little bit. I'm just going to move it up. Okay, so now we're going to go ahead and sew the zipper on the gussets. Then we're going to repeat on the other side. Okay, so now we have this strange looking thing. And before we move on, I want to sew my strap connectors on. So flip this right side up, and an inch above your mark where your concealed carry pocket goes, we are going to stitch this on the bag and have about 1/4 of an inch overhang. I'm just going to base that on. And do the same thing on the other side. Just about an inch above. Make sure they're even across from each other. Okay, moving right along. So you want to go ahead and flip your pocket back up. You can actually halfway close these zippers if you'd like. Kind of get the pulls out of the way. And now we're going to stitch the bottom of this gusset. So you're going to bring these ends so they are right sides together. We're going to clip them and stitch them. Then we're going to open up the seam allowance and we're going to stitch 1/8 of an inch from each side, just so that it stays down when you don't have any funny bump when we set the bag down. I'm going to turn, make 1 stitch this way, or 2 stitches, say, and then come back down this side. Okay, it's coming together quickly. So now we want to match up our center of our seam here with the center of our bag. We're going to clip this and we're going to sew the rest of this gusset on. Now, whenever you sew around a curve, Remember, you always want to clip your straight edge. So in this case, our straight edge is our gusset piece. So I'm just going to put a few little clips in here. And it will slide right in. I'm not clipping my concealed carry pocket here. I'm just clipping the gusset itself to the bag, to the front of the bag. See, I'm kind of moving my zipper out of the way as I do it. Okay, so we're going to start up here about where we left off at our mark. And then we're going to stitch all the way around the bag, and we're going to end up again about where our mark is. You don't want to stitch the concealed carry pocket in here. You want to keep that out. And then on your zippers, you're just going to kind of pull them out of the way like this as you stitch. And when you do that, you're going to probably end up stitching over the zipper a little bit, and that's fine. It's going to kind of close it, and it'll all be good. It's not a problem. I'm just going to fold my concealed carry pocket out of the way. And actually, if you want to do this from the other side, you can. I usually like stitching from the gusset side. So let's see if I can do this here. So I have that folded out of the way in the back. See, it's folded back. And then I'm just going to start right there where my stitches are and come around. Making sure my concealed pocket's out of the way. And honestly, if you sew that in with this, it's not the end of the world. It actually would probably hold it down some. It'd be okay. So if it's easier for you to do that, certainly do that. Okay, and then over here, let's make sure this is out of the way. Get my zipper kind of pulled out here and come around. Okay. So there we have it all stitched together. So I'm going to just cut around my gusset pieces here, my rounded pieces, because I want to make sure that this lays nice and flat. I'm also going to burn the edges of my zipper one more time to make sure if there's any extra, a lot of extra, I'll cut them. And probably cut that back a little bit. And then burn the edges so that they don't fray. Get your piece of Decoville or Peltex And I'm just going to put some double-sided tape on here to hold it down. And we're just going to put it on the back, on the bottom of this. Find the center of it so that you can match your center up with your seam. We're just going to peel the backing off of this and put it on the bag. So I'm just going to match the center up, and I'm going to try to put it right up against that stitching. That I just did. Get it on there real good. All right. So we're going to put, well, before we put it aside, let's go ahead and stitch the bottom of our concealed carry pocket closed. And also the top. Now when you do this, if you can't get exactly to the edges, don't worry about it. It's not going to make a difference. For instance, up here, you know, as you stitch this, if you can't get exactly to the edge, it's okay. I am going to pull my zipper out of the way when I do this though, and just pull my flap, my zipper, and just I'm going to close my zipper almost to the top, not quite. Because I want my two ends of my zipper here to be close. Okay, I don't want this to be down here and then for them to be off. We're going to take the upper part of this gusset and flip this around, and we want to stitch all of this together. Now the reason why we made these marks is because these are our stitching lines on the back of this gusset. So in this seam, as we do this, we're going to kind of close our zipper, we're going to capture our strap adjuster and sew the rest of this gusset on. Okay, so I'm just going to flip this over, line up the edges, I'm going to pull the zipper part out so that I stitch over it as I finish the seam. I'm going to start right here at this seam. I'm going to stitch up to this middle V, to the point mark on the V, and then I'm going to turn and stitch up this side and back stitch. One thing you need to do though is you need to flip this over about a ½ inch and match it up with your gusset mark on your, so I have a gusset mark here on my bag. I want the end of that to be matched up with that gusset mark. So I'm going to put a little bit of double-sided tape on there just to hold that down. and just make sure that the fold of the gusset is matched up with the mark on the bag. Okay. I'm going to do the same thing on this side. I'm going to close my zipper up some. Bring this around so that it captures the strap connector. Pull my zipper out. Make sure those ends are kind of together. Pull the zipper out. Look and see where my gusset's supposed to end on my bag and fold this down. Now, obviously, when you fold that down, you're not going to be able to see your stitch lines, but as you stitch up, you will see where your stitch line ends. So what I mean by that is, pull this up, clip it, and then see where my gusset ends. Make sure that fold, that edge of the fold, is right on that mark. And then I'm just going to, as I stitch this, I will just be stitching up and then just continue with that 1/2 inch mark, okay? So I see where my point is, I'm going to stitch there, and then I'm just going to stitch right up and just kind of follow that line. Even though I can't see it, if it helps, you can go ahead and mark it on the right side, but you really, on the wrong side is where you're going to be following it, and then you just stitch up to the top. Don't stitch beyond this. Don't stitch on top of the flap. You just want to stop at the fold. So actually, I am going to stitch from this side on this, start at the top from this side. So you can see, I know where my mark is. It's going to be right about there. Put my needle in, do a little back stitch, come down to that point on that V, and then I'm just going to pivot and I'm going to come down and meet my other stitch line, making sure my zipper is pulled out of the way, and I'm going to just stitch right on there. So what this is doing is it's closing our zipper, stitching down our strap connector, and finishing the top part of the gusset all in one. So that's what it ends up looking like. Okay, it gets narrow and then it gets a little larger there. Okay, so now you see here at the top our zipper is closed. We can't lose our zipper pull now. So I'm going to just cut off the extra, burn the edges, and all my extra little threads here. And then if there's any little bit of the strap adjuster sticking out, I'm just going to cut that off too. Okay, so do the same thing with the other side. I'm going to start from the bottom here. Make sure I pull my zipper out. Meet up, starting basically where I left off, where my stitches are when I sewed my zipper on. Stick my needle down right there, and then come on up to this point, and then I'm going to pivot and then turn and come up the side. Okay, so I'm at the point. I'm just going to turn it and still make sure my fold matches up, which it does, and I'm going to stitch right to the end of the fold. Without stitching on the flap. zipper, extra zipper off. And the edges. If there's any little part of the pole that's sticking out, I'm gonna, or not the pole, the connector, I'm gonna cut that off. And just like that, now we have our front assembly done. And you see on the front assembly how it goes narrow and then it kind of goes wider again. Okay? Pretty cool, huh? Okay, so we're going to set this aside for just a minute and we're going to work on our front pocket. So the front pocket, of course, has a lining piece and a main piece. We're just going to put those right sides together and we're going to stitch along the top. Okay, from here, because you have a slight curve, trim your seam allowance, or you can cut clips in this. So, because, you know, it is a slight curve, I want to have that seam allowance there to stitch over when I top stitch. So I'm just going to cut these little clips in. And again, it's not that severe of a curve, but it's enough that I want to make sure this lays nice and flat. So I'm just going to clip. You could certainly use some pinking shears and cut this as well. These scissors, these are Kai scissors, and I saw them on my website. You're going to see I have some notions on my website. I will never sell anything that I don't use myself, that I don't think is great and wonderful and like. Anyway, these scissors are awesome and they're perfect for this kind of thing because they're sharp, they're pointy, they get in edges, and they clip through quite a bit of fabric at one time. So anyway, get yourself a pair. They're pretty reasonably priced. They're less than $20. They're like $18 or $19. So, all right, so I'm going to fold this back. And, you know, I don't like my lining peeking through, so I'm going to really pull this and make sure that I actually see a little bit of my main fabric from the back. Because I don't want that lining showing. Okay, so from here, I'm going to go ahead and top stitch. So I'm going to take this over to my domestic machine and I'm going to stitch, top stitch each fold here. So 1, 2. Then I'm going to find the center and I'm going to stitch right down the center. Once I do that, we'll go ahead and put the backing on. Okay, so I have each fold stitched and I stitched down the center. From here, you're going to put the back piece on. And you're going to stitch, leaving an opening in the bottom so you can turn this. So once again, I'm going to go to my domestic machine to do this because I left my woven interfacing out of my seam allowance, so I just have a couple pieces of cotton here, which this machine does not do well with. So I'm just going to stitch here, come around, up, all the way around, down, and then just stitch there. And then I'll come back and we'll turn it. Okay, so I have my backing on now, and I have a hole here that I'm going to go ahead and pull this through. I am going to trim my edges on this just because it's a little bit, with the layers, it's a little bit thicker, and I think it's going to do better for me to do that than to try to fold my edges. So we're going to turn this around. And this is going to serve as both a credit card pocket or slots and a slip pocket. So just point your corners out. A lot of you know this already. I carry these on my website as well. These things are wonderful. Something else I use and love. Anything else, I'm going to press this, bring it to my iron, press it. I'm going to go back to my domestic machine and just top stitch along the top of this because again, it's going to be a slip pocket. And then when we come back, we'll sew it to the main panel on the other 3 sides. Okay, so we're going to put our credit card slots on the bottom, or on our front piece. So I'm just going to look at this here. I'm going to measure up. And if you're using vinyl like I am, you really can't put pins in here to hold this. You could put a little bit of double-sided tape if you want to. I'm just going to try to hold it with my hand to see how that goes. All right, I'm going to make sure I didn't sew too far over. Make sure my credit cards still fit. Yep, good to go. Okay. So we're going to put our front pocket on top now. I've got a little bit of overhang here. I'm just going to cut that off. Make sure it all looks good and even, matching up my centers. Put a couple clips, and then we're going to base this in place. I want to make sure that it's about the same distance here from the bottom and the top. Yep, looking good. Okay. So base this on. front pocket with our credit card slots inside. And this is a great pocket for a phone or anything like that. All right, now we're going to sew the front onto the back. So match up your centers, bottom. We're going to match up, not the top here, but where our gusset comes in. So where we have our gusset mark on our front piece, we're going to match up the gusset there, the fold of the gusset right on there. That's going to be our, kind of like our top. So that it just kind of falls right in there. Okay, do the same thing for the other side where your mark is for the top of your gusset and match that up. Put my D-ring down in there so I don't sew over it. And you're going to want to sew from your gusset side, so the gusset side up, because you want to see your stitches up here in the corner as to where to stitch. And then I usually find it's easier to stitch from the gusset side anyway, because you're taking this straight line and pushing it down into this curve. So I'm just going to put a couple of clips here. And you notice when I do these clips, there's no rhyme or reason to it. You just, as long as you don't clip all the way to your stitch line, there's no hard, fast rule as to how many or how far apart or anything like that. Okay, so we're going to stitch this on. We're going to start and stop at our marks, or at our gusset fold up here. We're going to stitch along that line we drew to our 1/2 inch point, and then we're going to turn and we're going to come down and around. So we're going to start here. Come down to that point. And then we're going to pivot. And we're going to go around the rest of the bag. So now I'm going to stitch to my point up here, and then we're going to pivot and stitch to the end. Kind of pull my D-ring out of the way here. Okay, so I'm at the point, and I'm going to just turn, stitch to the end. Okay, so once you get that stitched on, you want to go ahead and trim your seam allowances, especially around these curves. We'll do it here at the bottom. And I am going to trim kind of where this section narrows in over here. I don't want to trim all the way up to the tip of my gusset where it's folded, but I do want to trim in this narrow section just to kind of get the extra bulk out here. Okay, so we are actually going to leave this bag as it is. We're not going to turn it yet, even though I'd love to turn it and see it. We're going to wait. So we're going to set this aside, and we're going to work on our lining. We're going to go ahead and sew the bottom of our gusset together, and top stitch. I'm going to do that at my domestic machine, just like we did on the main gusset panel. Stitch, open the seam up, and top stitch. The other thing I'm going to do is take my zipper from our zipper pocket and sew it right side of the pocket to the wrong side of the zipper. I'm going to flip it up, top stitch it, and then do the same thing with this pocket piece. So I'm going to do both of those things at my domestic machine. About there. And you notice it looks like it goes really high up on this piece. Oops. But that's where it's supposed to go. So this mark is actually where the zipper is going to go. So I'm going to take this piece and just kind of center it on that mark, and also center it in the middle of this pattern piece. So I will stick that down, sew these other things at my domestic, and I'll be back. Okay, I have my zipper together, my zipper pocket together. You see the right side of the zipper with the wrong side of the fabric, and the right side of the fabric with the wrong side of the zipper. I'm going to put my zipper pull on, and I also have my gusset. I know it's hard to see because it's white, but I do have it stitched and top stitched down. So I've centered this on the line I drew. So in this case, the opening is centered on the line. I see the line through the opening. We're going to stitch around the outside. So as you cut, just make sure you don't cut your overlay. Kind of fold this in half, do a little snip, and stick it in. Make sure the tip of my scissors goes under my overlay. I'm just going to flip it over and cut the sides out here. This does not have to be pretty. No one is going to see it. This is just, you want to cut it back enough so you do not see the lining through your hole, through your front. Okay, so look at that, so pretty, look at that, so ugly, but that's okay. All right, so take your zipper pocket, we're going to put some double-sided tape on there. We're going to get it centered in this hole. Okay, once it's centered, go ahead and stitch on the inside, making sure that your pocket is open in the back so you don't stitch your pocket closed. One more stitch. Okay, once you have that stitched on, fold the top of your pocket down to the bottom. Put some clips. Cut the excess off the bottom. And then we're going to stitch the sides closed. Leave the bottom open as we are pulling the bag through that pocket, as I mentioned earlier. Just make sure you back stitch really well at the bottom of your pocket, because since we are pulling the bag through there, you don't want to have to restitch. Restitch because of broken stitches or stitches that come out as we turn it. Okay. So now we attach the gusset, and we're going to do it the same way we did the main bag. I'm going to go ahead and clip the bottom. We're going to find our mark where our gusset ends. We're going to fold our gusset about a 1/2 inch. Line that up. And then clip the rest of it. Make sure that you clip the straight edge, which in this case is your gusset, to get that curve to fit in. And do the same thing on this side. Fold this down about a 1/2 inch. Match it up with our mark. Clip our straight edge. And we're going to sew this on. You're going to do the same thing you did here that you did on the main bag. We're going to sew down our line to our point on our V, and then we're going to turn and we're going to come down. You do want to sew a slightly larger seam allowance here because you want your lining to fit nicely. So for this part, it doesn't matter. Just go ahead and sew it as you should. Go down to the point. Just going to kind of turn. And then I'm going to make my seam allowance larger. Now sometimes with gussets, it's a little hard to make your seam allowance larger on these curves especially. Because you have a convex and a concave curve you're trying to put together, and you're trying to take up more. And by doing that, one of the seams, or one of the pieces here, is drastically longer than the other. So just kind of try to ease it in. Sew to your point. Let's turn it and sew up. Make sure this is still matching up. All right. Looks good. We're going to sew our other side on the same way. We're going to sew this on the same way. Okay, on the lining I do want to cut the seam allowances back some. And again, don't cut up to your folded mark, just kind of veer off there. You want to leave that. Do the same thing on the other side. Okay. So from here we want to turn this around. Make sure that your zipper pocket is open. And we're going to put the bag together. So the first thing I'm going to do is put some double-sided tape along this edge here. So I'm just going to lay it down here. So take your zipper and you want to put your pulls on in opposing directions. Okay, you have your center of your zipper marked. You're going to match that to the center of the bag. And it doesn't matter whether you put it on the front or the back first. We want to go ahead and put this on. Now, I'm going to tell you that I want you to clip your straight edge, which in this case is your zipper. It's going to really help going around this curve. So you just want to put tiny little snips. And you really don't want to go that far in, maybe just about 1/8 of an inch, just enough to get it to curve a little bit. Okay, it's going to make a difference in how your zipper sits. Okay, we do the same thing on the other side. And actually, before I get too far, I am going to secure the ends of this zipper because if I don't, I'm going to lose my zipper pulls because we're going to be opening this zipper up. So let's do that before we forget. Okay, so I'm going to move my zipper pulls over. And put little snips in my zipper. So I can get it to sit nicely. Put this aside for a minute. Okay, so you want to go ahead and base this on for sure. This is one of those situations. And I'm going to, when I do this, I'm actually going to start down in my seam allowance. So remember I told you don't cut your seam allowance on your, all the way up to the top. I'm going to start stitching it down here. I'm just going to use about 1/8 of an inch. Okay. So now we're going to do the same thing on the other side. And it's usually best if you open your zipper. So let me take the backing of the tape off first. Let me just match up the center. Make some clips, short little clips. Make sure I can see it. So my clips are just barely, just enough to give it some wiggle room. Okay. I'm going to put a clip where my center is, and then I'm just going to open this up. Now, I'm going to let my zipper pull kind of fall down below this little side gusset seam. Obviously, that's the reason why we wanted to go ahead and stitch this, because we don't want to have to worry about this falling off. But it's just going to allow me to be able to sew this on a little easier. So I'm going to come down below onto the gusset where we didn't clip, where we didn't snip the side seam or cut back the side seam. Do the same thing on this side. Just go ahead and let the zipper pull fall below that. For right now, we'll pull it up in just a minute. Okay, and go ahead and baste this side on as well. Okay, so now we need to put our lining in here. And you guessed it, we're going to stick the lining in. I'm going to make sure that the back, my zipper is going towards the back of the bag. Go ahead and slide that in. And now we are going to peel the tape off and attach the lining to this zipper. So start in the center. This is why it's so important to make sure you mark your centers. And I'm going to, as I put this down, I am going to put some clips in it. Just to make sure it doesn't shift. I mean, it shouldn't with this tape, but just kind of gives me an extra assurance. So when you get down to here, you know, right now you're backwards. Your lining is inside your bag, right sides together. So this isn't going to really fall the way you're going to want it to. So go ahead and just get as close as you can to the bottom here, and don't worry about this part. See how that's not, this should be on the outside, and since it's on the inside, it's wanting to pull and not do right. Don't worry about that right now. We're just going to stitch as far down as we can, you know, starting as far down here as we can and come across, and when we top stitch, we'll catch that. So again, I'm just going to come down as far as I can because this is wanting to fold funny. It's actually not wanting to fold at all, it's wanting to pull away. I'm just going to put another clip right there. Okay, I'm going to do this side at the same time. Pull this off. All right, so let's stitch this on. I'm going to do it from the inside, and as I mentioned, see how this is folding up and it's acting all crazy? Don't clip it, just leave it. Start as far down as you can, which you're not going to go all the way to the end, it's okay, and then just come around. I'm going to make sure my zipper isn't doing anything funky here. On the curve, sometimes it wants to. Go ahead and lay it down. So when I pull this up, this lining piece up, see how that zipper is kind of wanting to pop up? It's because we're asking it to get smaller right there because it's going around a curve and it can't do it. It's got too much on it to do it. So I'm just going to have to kind of lay it down with my fingers and feel it and make sure it's laying down good as I come around this curve. And that's why you see me kind of taking my finger and putting it against the teeth. I want to make sure it's nice and flat. All right, and I can only go that far. See why? Because this lining piece is coming back, and I don't want to stitch over that. So that's as far as I'm going to go. I'm going to do a back stitch, and that's it. So when you look at this, you're going to see here is, let me see if I can get this. So here's the end of the zipper way down here. here's where my gusset ends, right here. And I was only able to stitch to way up here, because this piece won't come down and go flat. I guess I could have stitched a little bit more as I pull this out. Let me do that. So, you know, just understand that it's not going to go all the way. It's okay. Obviously go as far as you can and then just stop. And we'll get it when we top stitch. So we're going to flip this around. Do that one more time. Then we get to turn it. All right. Now, before we turn this bag, we want to make sure all of our curves, because there's a lot of curves in this bag, are trimmed and clipped, and so that we can turn it without having any problems. So even though I trim my seam allowances down here at the bottom, I am going to take a second to take my scissors here, my super sharp scissors, and just put a few clips in here. I'm going to, not only am I going to put clips in this, I'm going to cut little triangles out. Because sometimes when you put clips, the fabric on the clip, when you turn it, will kind of go over each other. It'll, where you put the clip, it's going to overlay and it's going to create a bulk, and we don't want that. So I'm just going to, on the most significant or severe part of the curve, then in this part, I'm just going to put a few little clips. It's pretty straight, but make sure. Okay, so I'm going to do the same thing on the other flap. Okay, so from here, let's go ahead and turn it. I'm going to stick my lining inside. So before we top stitch, I want to make sure that I get my zipper pulls out of there. So you see how you can't see my zipper pull? It's because it is down in the bag. So I'm just going to kind of pull it up, pull the tail up. pull it up and then stick the tail back down in there between the lining and the face fabric. So do the same thing on the other side. Don't forget to get it out of there, because otherwise you're not going to be able to close your bag. Isn't that cool? Okay, so we now need to top stitch. And our top stitching is going to be around here. We're going to top stitch this little area right here. Then around the back side, and then the same thing around here, because we want to close the zipper. You know, we want to go ahead and stitch across here so that our pole doesn't ever get lost down there again. As we do that, we're obviously want to catch our lining. So on the inside, you're going to want to make sure your lining is flat in there, and as you catch your lining, or as you stitch across, you're going to catch your lining, and it will, whatever you didn't get when you came down here, you see it's folded over, and you're going to catch that and sew it up when you do your top stitching. Okay, so let's go ahead and top stitch the bag. I'm going to start out by kind of smooshing it down here and pulling my zipper pull up a little bit. I'm going to go right across here first. Do a back stitch across the zipper, and then I'm just going to turn it So in some places, as I'm coming around, I'm pulling on the zipper a little bit if I feel like the zipper looks like it's too close to the edge of the bag. In other places, as I mentioned, I was pushing the zipper in. It just, it really wasn't that far off. It just, little areas I wanted to tweak. Okay, so I'm coming up here. I'm going to pull my zipper pull. Well, I'm going to wait till I get, let me push that back down. I don't want my zipper to buckle right here. So I'm going to make sure it's pushed in there really good. Okay, now I'm going to turn it, pull my zipper pull up just a little bit, and stitch across. I am going to back stitch across. again, and then come forward one more time. Just want to make sure that zipper is nice and secure. And then the last thing I'm going to do while I'm sitting here at the machine is to pull out the zipper pocket. And I'm going to clip that and I'm going to sew it. Now, what I'm probably going to do is to sew this over at my domestic machine, just because the thread is white over there and it'll just blend in a little bit better. So I'm just going to fold this over, fold the pocket over the bottom of it and clip it. Just like this. You can press this before you sew it if you want. And I'm just going to sew this right across, and then we'll take a look at the bag. And here it is completed. So, as I showed you in the beginning, we have this wonderful flap, great slip pocket. These open up for a nice secure body. And I hope you enjoyed the tutorial, the Madge by American Stitchers. I'll have the pattern link below, and until next time, happy sewing.